everyone, and welcome to the Scrapbook Blessings Club's September video hop. Today we are featuring the digital images from the Etsy shop Art by Moran. I'm Miranda and I am second in the lineup. There are 7 of us design team members with the Scrapbook Blessings Club. And be sure to go to each of our videos, subscribe, watch, and comment for a chance to be entered in a drawing to win 5 digital images from Art by Moran. Below in the description box you will find all of the details and information you need to enter the drawing. The Art by Moran image that I'm using today is called Pencil Penny, and I will link to it below. I will be making a card with this digital image, so let's get started. So here she is, Pencil Penny, and this is the image that I'm going to be coloring and adding to the front of my card. I'm going to begin by using some watercolor paper, and I'm going to print my image on this watercolor paper. That way, whenever I go to color it, it will take better to the Copic marker that I'm going to be using. And here is the image that I'm going to be coloring. I'm going to begin by using a Copic marker, and this is the E00 marker, and I'm using this for her skin. Now on this one, if you'll notice, I'm going around the edges first, and that is to make where the shadow would naturally hit a little bit darker and leaving it a little bit lighter in the center of her face. Then I'm going in with some colored pencils, and I always like to test the colors over on the side of the paper just to make sure that I have the right colors. I'm going in with the dark shade of red first to add where the shadows would be and the outline, and then I'm going in with the lighter shade to color in the main part of her dress and go over it with a white colored pencil to blend. After you color, go ahead and fussy cut the image out using your scissors, and she will look something like this. And this is the image that you're going to be using for your card. Let's begin by using an A2 card size, that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I have a side folding card, and this is just white cardstock. And on top of that, I'm going to put a smaller piece that is cut by 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, and that will leave a little bit of the white border of the base. And I'm going to go ahead and use my ATG gun and add some glue and adhere that down. And after you have your accent paper adhered down, you're ready to begin laying out your card and how you want it to appear. I found these 2 coordinating colors seem to match pretty well with the image and the other colors I had in the card. And I decided to add a little bit of ribbon in the background. It did need a little something more. And what I'm doing here is just laying everything out to kind of get an idea of how I want my card to look. Using my ATG gun once again, I'm going to run a thin strip of glue along the back of the ribbon and adhere that to the front of the card. There is another way you can do this. If your ribbon isn't wide enough to use an ATG gun, you can always just wrap it around and tape it before you glue down your blue base. And I'm doing the same thing with this second ribbon, and the way that I line it up is I will put it next to the one that's already down and kind of gradually move it down, and that way I can make sure that it's lined up. And then I'm using my scissors and folding over the edge and cutting off the excess ribbon. The next step is to add your score tape, And the reason I'm going to add this is because I'm going to do a little strip of foiling in the center and measure it about the length you need. And you can go ahead and adhere that down. It is double-sided tape. Just leave the backing on. And again, line it up and press it into place about where you want it. And then you can just use your scissors to cut off the excess. And this is what the deco foil looks like. And I chose red because it does match with the card colors that I'm using. And just cut a little thin strip of the deco foil. And then you can go ahead and peel the backing from your score tape. And that will reveal the sticky side. And place your deco foil down with the colored side up. So the silver side will go down on the card and the red colored side is facing me. And I just gently rub that into place with my finger. And then I will peel off the excess deco foil and it leaves you with the little shiny strip right there in the center. Now I'm going in with my smaller pieces of cardstock cut at 2 3/4 by 3 3/4 and 2 1/2 by 3 1/2. The reason I cut those at two different sizes is so it will leave a border on one. I'm using my ATG gun again, and I'm going to adhere that down to the larger base, leaving a small white border. After those are adhered, I'm going to lay that out about where I want it on my card and get my digital image and place it roughly where I think I want it. And then I'm going to go ahead and add foam squares on the back of the digital image. These will pop the image up off of the flat cardstock. If there are places on the image that are very small, you can always cut the foam squares in half or even in quarters. When you're ready to adhere your image down, you can go ahead and pull the backing off of the foam squares and place her roughly where you want on your cardstock. And if you don't press down firmly at this point, you still have time to adjust. Now, when you get her where you want her, you can go ahead and press the image down. And you see how it adds a little bit of dimension to your card. At this point, we'll go ahead and use the ATG gun again and glue this down to the card base. And I'm just going to put that more or less in the center of the card, and I'm not really measuring, I'm just kind of looking to see where it looks centered, and before I press the entire cardstock piece down, I am making sure it's aligned, and that looks pretty good, so we'll go ahead and press that into place. For the card sentiment, I decided to go ahead and emboss it in white. I always begin embossing with a piece of copy paper folded in half, and I place my card on the copy paper. This not only lines your card up with the straight crease you've just folded, but it helps whenever you're pouring your embossing powder back into the jar. I'm using Versamark ink, which is basically a clear ink. It's more or less like a glue. It's very sticky, and this is what your embossing powder will adhere to. And I'm just using the word hello for my sentiment, lining that up and pressing down. And the thing about the clear stamps is that you can see pretty well where you're about to stamp, so that helps you to line it up. And after that is stamped, you can barely see it because it is a clear, but once you put your embossing powder on, it will show up really well. And I just sprinkle a generous amount of the white embossing powder on and dust the excess onto your paper. Now, a lot of times you'll have static that will cause the embossing powder to stick in places you don't want it. I just use a children's size paintbrush because it is coarse, and I go ahead and brush the excess powder away where I don't want it. Be sure to do this step before you heat emboss, because once you heat emboss, it is set in place since it melts it into the paper. After I finish brushing off all of the excess embossing powder, I'll go ahead and put the extra powder back into my jar. And this is where the paper comes in helpful because it funnels it in, and that way you don't waste any of your product. Allow your heat gun to get hot, and once it's hot you can go ahead and run that over your embossing, and that will go ahead and melt it into the paper. You'll notice it turns brighter white once you heat emboss it. And this is what it looks like after it's embossed. It's kind of hard to see, but it does leave it with a little bit of a glossy finish. And it just depends on the kind of embossing powder you have as to the finish. The final touch on the card is to add some enamel dots, and I am placing them roughly where I think I want them. And what I'm going to do is, once I get them exactly where I think they look good, is to add some glue dots on the back of those and adhere them down to the card. This is what the card looks like once the enamel dots are down. I think it turned out really well, and I was really pleased with the image. Here are some additional views of the card. Thank you for watching, and remember to look in the description box to see how you can enter to win 5 of these digital images.